Today, we explore a question as old as humanity itself. Why do good people suffer so much? At first glance, the question feels unjust. Shouldn't goodness shield us? Shouldn't a kind heart attract kindness in return? And yet, time and time again, we witness the gentle broken, the honest betrayed, the faithful abandoned. It feels cruel. But perhaps it is in this very suffering that we must look for meaning. Not vengeance, not escape, but understanding. Let us begin by confronting a delusion we often carry, the myth of moral immunity. Many of us grow up believing that life is a cosmic balance sheet. Be good, and you will be rewarded. Harm others, and you will suffer. This moral economy comforts us, but it is not reality. The world does not bend to our inner fairness. The rain falls on the just and the unjust alike. The illusion that goodness ensures ease leads not only to suffering, but also to confusion and bitterness when the opposite occurs. Second, consider this: goodness is not weakness, but it is often burdened. The good person is open, their heart feels more, their conscience speaks louder. When the world hurts, they don't numb themselves. They care, they grieve, they hope, even when others stop hoping. In this way, suffering is not merely something that happens to the good. It is something they carry, something they enter into, because their very nature does not allow indifference. But this depth of feeling is not a curse, it is a calling. The ancient Stoics taught us that suffering can be used. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor and philosopher, wrote, "The obstacle is the way." Viktor Frankl, who endured the Holocaust, said that those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. Good people are often given suffering not as punishment, but as a test, one that awakens purpose. Through their pain, they transform. They learn not just how to survive, but how to guide others. Here's the paradox: evil often suffers less in the short term because it is unburdened by ethics. It acts, takes, manipulates. But good people, they restrain, they reflect, they endure injustice rather than inflict it. Their suffering is not weakness. It is the cost of integrity in a world that often rewards the opposite. But perhaps most important of all is this: suffering can become sacred. Many of the world's wisest souls, Buddha, Jesus, Rumi, Gandhi, were not born enlightened. They suffered. Their suffering opened them. It refined them like fire refines gold, and it is through their scars, not their comfort, that they became beacons for others. So, when we ask, why do good people suffer so much, we must also ask, what are they becoming through it? What depth is being carved? What wisdom is being prepared? What truth is being planted? One of the most persistent illusions in human thought is the belief in what we might call moral immunity, the assumption that if we live good, honest, compassionate lives, we will somehow be protected from the harshness of the world. This is deeply embedded in many religious, cultural, and even philosophical systems. It is the subconscious equation: if I do good, life will be good to me in return. But life does not operate like a moral vending machine. This expectation that virtue should result in ease and reward is not only false but also dangerous. It sets up good people for immense confusion and disillusionment when they suffer. When tragedy strikes the kind-hearted or betrayal wounds the loyal, they are not just hurt by the event. They are spiritually disoriented. They ask, why me? I was good. I never harmed anyone. Why am I the one suffering? This pain is doubled by a false belief in a cosmic fairness that reality doesn't always uphold. Philosophers from ancient times have grappled with this dilemma. In the Bible, the book of Job presents a righteous man who suffers immensely without cause. His story is not just about patience. It is a confrontation with the idea that goodness guarantees protection. Similarly, in ancient Greek thought, figures like Socrates were condemned by society, not because they were wicked, but because they were too truthful, too principled. Socrates himself said, "No evil can happen to a good man, either in life or after death, not because good men are safe from suffering, but because true good is found in the integrity of one's soul, not in the absence of pain." In Eastern thought as well, the Buddha faced suffering not as something unfair, but as inevitable. His enlightenment did not come from escaping suffering, but from understanding it. He taught that suffering is not a sign of moral failure, but a condition of existence. The idea that good people should not suffer misunderstands the nature of life. Life is not a moral algorithm. It is a complex interplay of choices, randomness, nature, society, and human behavior. Earthquakes do not check for moral character. Illness does not avoid the kind. Betrayal can come even to the purest hearts. What this means is profound. Being good is not a shield, it is a path. It's not about reward or punishment. It's about alignment with truth, with justice, with compassion, even when the world does not respond in kind. This is a difficult lesson. It's much easier to believe that our goodness guarantees us peace, but mature philosophy teaches otherwise. It teaches us to live with depth, even when there is no applause. To remain upright, even when it costs us. To hold on to integrity, not for what it brings us, but for what it makes us. So, the first step in understanding why good people suffer is to let go of the myth of moral immunity. Life doesn't owe us for being kind, but in choosing kindness, honesty, and love anyway, despite the suffering, we become powerful, we become real, and that, perhaps, is the deeper reward. To understand why good people suffer, we must look deeply into what makes a person good, not in the superficial sense of rule, following, or image, but in the deeper psychological and spiritual sense. Goodness is not just action, it is sensitivity, it is consciousness, it is awareness of others, of justice, of pain, and of love, and herein lies a deep truth. The very nature of a good heart makes it more susceptible to suffering. A good person is not just someone who avoids harming others. They are someone who feels deeply. They are often more open, more vulnerable, more attuned to the feelings of others. In philosophy, particularly in existential and depth psychology, this kind of inner openness is seen as a form of maturity. Carl Jung said, "A good man does not seek to be good, he seeks to become whole." In that wholeness, a person becomes able to carry the suffering of the world, not turn away from it. Let's break this down into specific traits that often define a good person, and how each trait increases the burden they carry. 1. Empathy. Good people empathize. They don't just observe pain, they absorb it. When someone suffers, the good person feels it as their own. This emotional openness, though beautiful, comes at a cost. It means their heart is always open to being hurt, not only by their own life events but also by the pain of others. Where others may detach or turn away, the good person stays. 2. Conscience and responsibility. A good person reflects deeply on their actions. They are constantly asking, "Did I do the right thing?" Even when they are not at fault, they tend to question themselves. This introspection, though noble, often leads to unnecessary guilt and inner turmoil. The immoral man moves on without thought. The good person feels every wrong, every loss, every wound. 3. Forgiveness and trust. Because good people value relationships and see the best in others, they often forgive too quickly or trust too easily. While this gives them a noble spirit, it also makes them vulnerable to manipulation, betrayal, and exploitation. Their openness can become their wound. 4. Moral restraint. The good person suffers because they refuse to retaliate. When wronged, they do not seek vengeance. They absorb the blow and walk away. This moral restraint may protect their soul, but it often leaves them carrying the emotional burden alone, while the wrongdoer escapes consequence. 5. Idealism. Good people often believe in a better world. They hold onto ideals of justice, love, honesty, community, but reality rarely meets those ideals. The gap between their vision of what should be and what is becomes a source of deep existential pain. So, paradoxically, the very virtues that make someone good also make them more exposed to life's darker sides. But let us not mistake this vulnerability for weakness. In fact, it is the opposite. To choose goodness, knowing it comes with suffering, requires immense strength. It takes courage to feel deeply in a world that rewards numbness. It takes power to stay kind in a world that teaches hardness. Good people suffer more not because they are weak, but because they are brave enough to remain open. And in that openness they do not avoid suffering, they transform it. Suffering, while universal, is not experienced the same by everyone. For some, suffering breaks them. For others, especially those who are good, conscious, and spiritually awake, suffering becomes a test, a refining fire, a challenge not of the body but of the soul. This is where we begin to understand the philosophical depth of the third keynote. Good people often suffer because they are capable of profound growth, transformation, and meaning-making. Throughout history, some of the most morally upright, compassionate, and visionary individuals have undergone deep suffering, and what separates them from others is not the absence of pain, but their relationship to it. They don't merely endure it, they transcend through it. 1. Suffering as a crucible for growth. In ancient philosophy, particularly Stoicism, suffering is not seen as inherently evil. Instead, it is a natural part of existence, a test that reveals the quality of one's character. The Stoics taught that external circumstances are often beyond our control, but our response to them reveals our true nature. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In other words, pain is inevitable, but how we use that pain is a choice. And good people, because of their inner values, often use suffering as a means of deep reflection, humility, and evolution. 2. The Viktor Frankl insight, meaning in suffering. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and philosopher, provided one of the most powerful insights into suffering. In his book Man's Search for Meaning, he wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." He observed that those who endured unspeakable suffering with grace were those who could assign meaning to their pain. They saw it as a calling, a responsibility, even a mission. Good people often suffer not because they are weak, but because they possess the depth to ask questions, to seek purpose, and to grow through their wounds. 3. The fire that purifies. A common metaphor across spiritual traditions is that of fire. Fire burns, yes, but it also purifies. In Hindu philosophy, suffering is considered a form of tapas, a spiritual heat that burns away ego and illusion. In Christianity, saints and mystics viewed trials as opportunities to become closer to the divine. In Buddhism, suffering is the doorway to enlightenment. It is what causes the individual to begin the journey inward. This idea is echoed in psychology as well. Carl Jung believed that suffering brings us face to face with the shadow, the parts of ourselves we often deny. Through suffering, the good person must reckon with their pain, their limits, their disappointments, and in doing so, they become more whole. 4. The quiet strength of the good. It is easy to lash out when hurt. It is easy to become cynical, but the good person often chooses restraint, forgiveness, and compassion in the face of pain. And this requires a kind of strength that cannot be seen, but only felt, a spiritual endurance. The strength to weep and still stand, to break and still believe in love, to hurt and still help others heal, that is not weakness, that is transcendence. So why do good people suffer? Because they are the ones who can transform suffering into wisdom, pain into purpose, and wounds into strength. They are not chosen for suffering, they are capable of carrying it, and in doing so, they carry humanity forward. This keynote cuts into a deep moral and psychological truth. Those who live without conscience often suffer less, not because life is more kind to them, but because they choose to live without the weight of moral restraint. In contrast, good people suffer more because they carry the invisible burden of choosing the right thing, even when it costs them everything. 1. The freedom of the ruthless vs. the burden of the good. In a morally inverted world, it may seem as though those who lie, cheat, and manipulate thrive. They get ahead, they avoid consequences. Why? Because they are not bound by guilt, empathy, or conscience. They do what serves them without the inner voice saying, "But this will hurt someone." Good people, however, are restrained. Their morality acts like an inner law. They do not betray, they do not exploit, they hesitate before speaking harsh words. They carry self-imposed limitations not because they are weak, but because they are responsible. And this responsibility can be painful. It means walking away from revenge. It means suffering injustice in silence. It means standing alone in a crowd that celebrates wrong. And it means hurting without retaliating, without abandoning values, and often without being understood. 2. The quiet integrity of goodness. This principle is seen in countless philosophical and spiritual traditions. Take, for example, the teaching of Jesus when he said, "Turn the other cheek." This was not a call to cowardice. It was a call to moral courage. To choose restraint when power is available. To choose forgiveness when vengeance is easy. Similarly, the Bhagavad Gita speaks of the sattvic person, one who acts with discipline, not desire. The good person acts, not for reward, but out of dharma, inner duty. Goodness is not passive. It is disciplined, and discipline often brings suffering. It means choosing what is right, not what is easy. 3. The inner war, holding back when you could strike. Imagine being betrayed. A ruthless person will respond with attack, lies, or manipulation. They may come out unscarred in the short term, but a good person restrains themselves. They weigh their words. They ask, will this harm someone more than it helps? And so they carry what others cast off. This inner war between what we can do and what we should do is one of the reasons good people suffer so much. They are not only wounded by the world, but also wounded by their own refusal to become part of it. Carl Jung wrote, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you do not know, it will tell you." But good people do know who they are, and because of that, they choose not to become what the world demands. And that choice hurts. 4. The hidden cost of a clear conscience. Here is the paradox. Those who act immorally may sleep easier, but they become hollow. Their soul becomes numb. In contrast, the good person often suffers with a clear conscience. They feel more, they endure more, they walk away more, but they never lose themselves. And in a world that praises results over integrity, this can feel like a curse. But in truth, it is a hidden power. For while the ruthless may win the moment, the good inherit meaning. Their pain becomes a part of a greater truth, a truth rooted in love, justice, and spiritual strength. So yes, evil acts freely, but good restrains itself, and that restraint is the mark of real power. It may not shine in the world's eyes, but it glows in the soul. Why do good people suffer? One of the most profound philosophical answers is this: because suffering opens a door that comfort never will. For the good-hearted, suffering becomes a portal, a passage to higher consciousness, deeper empathy, and spiritual awakening. Good people don't suffer without meaning. They ask why, they feel deeper, they reflect. And in doing so, their suffering often evolves into something greater than personal pain. It becomes wisdom. 1. The role of questioning. When good people suffer, they don't simply endure, they examine. Their pain becomes a question. Why is the world unjust? Why do I feel this deeply? What is the purpose of this agony? These are not just emotional reactions. They are philosophical inquiries, and this is where wisdom begins, not in knowing but in the courage to ask. As Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. Suffering demands examination, and for the good, this examination leads not to bitterness, but to self-awareness, truth, and often spiritual maturity. 2. Pain deepens perception. Comfort can make us shallow. It can lull us into distraction, ego, and illusion. But pain strips away illusions. It reveals what matters. When good people suffer, they often awaken to truths that others ignore. They see the fragility of life, the importance of compassion, the emptiness of materialism, the interconnectedness of all beings. This clarity is not given freely. It is earned in the fire of suffering. As Rumi wrote, the wound is the place where the light enters you. The good person doesn't just carry wounds, they grow through them. 3. Transforming pain into purpose. Many of the greatest teachers, healers, and revolutionaries suffered profoundly. Nelson Mandela emerged from decades of imprisonment, not with vengeance, but with a vision for reconciliation. Mother Teresa walked among the dying and the forgotten, fueled not by ease, but by the compassion born of deep pain. Buddha left behind royalty after seeing suffering, and his entire path of enlightenment began with understanding dukkha, suffering. These individuals didn't simply experience pain, they transformed it, and that is a hallmark of goodness, not the absence of struggle, but the power to turn that struggle into something sacred. 4. The alchemy of the soul. Carl Jung, too, believed in this transformation. He saw suffering as a necessary encounter with the shadow, the hidden parts of the self. In facing pain, the individual begins to integrate, to expand, to become whole. Jung stated, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." Good people, because of their self-awareness and inner integrity, often go through this painful journey not with resistance, but with openness. They are willing to face their own darkness, and in doing so, they emerge wiser, deeper, and more compassionate. 5. From the individual to the collective, perhaps most beautifully, good people don't hoard the wisdom they gain through suffering. They share it. They write, teach, create, listen, and help. Their own wounds become bridges for others. Their brokenness becomes a form of leadership. So, why do good people suffer so much? Because their pain becomes a portal to truth, into meaning, into deeper love. Not every person can walk through that portal and return with light, but the good, the brave, the conscious, they do, and in doing so they carry not just their own healing, but the healing of the world.